All right. Um, Usually, we're talking to a creator or somebody doing a Kickstarter, but I also like to let people know of the different podcasts that are out there because there are some that I've found that are really great, and uh, including the Longbox Review, who and Eric Isaacson, who we're going to be talking to this evening. Uh, we met through the Comic Geek Speak community, and back in 2015 at the 10-year anniversary. So that's I met him there and found out about his. I don't know if he was doing a podcast at the time, but we'll find out about that. So let me quit rambling. I'll bring him in and let him do some talking.
Hey, Chad.
How's it going?
Good, good. How are you?
How get talking? How's health? Busy.
Yeah.
Trapped in the house since March.
Yes.
So before we get talking about the podcast and all that, I like to ask people if they remember the first comic they read and or what one got them kind of into the hobby. It's just interesting because everybody has a different story.
Well, yeah, my story is probably not much different than most people, but mine was there were 3 issues that got me into this. I had read comics, years before when I was younger. You read your Richie Riches and whatnot comics like that or comic strips in the newspaper, right? And that's kind of what gets you into it. At least for me, it did. But there were 3 issues, 3 Marvel comics actually, that got me into the hobby and basically started me down this long path of where I've ended up now, being a podcaster and just a really big fan of comic books. I love to celebrate comic books, which is obviously why I started the show. But this was late fall, I think 1978 is when I discovered these comics. And the 3 issues that I got were Avengers 177, which was the final chapter of the Korvac saga. And the other 2 were Spider-Man issues, Amazing Spider-Man 187, where Spider-Man teams up with Cap, and they take on Electro. And then the final one was a reprint, Marvel Tales, number, I think, 97, which was a reprint of Amazing Spider-Man 121, The Death of Gwen Stacy. And so those 3 issues got me excited about comics, and I have not stopped buying or reading comic books since that day.
And what kind of gave you the podcasting bug?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned Comic Geek Speak before. And before, if you don't mind, before I answer that question, I just want to say to your listeners, your watchers, we did meet at the Comic Geek Speak 10th anniversary, and I've always felt grateful to Chad because he kind of took me under his wing while we were at the show. I didn't know anybody there. It was my first time in that part of the country. I had chatted with Peter Rios a few times on my show, but I was just a listener, a fan of Comic Geek Speak. And but I had some miles, some air miles at that time, and so I decided, you know what, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna take the plunge and I'm gonna go. And when I got there, I didn't. Yes, like I said, never been to that part of the country, so it was a huge adventure for me. I went by myself and I went. There was a dinner for everybody that first night. And I think that's when you and I started talking. You started talking to me because I'm sure I looked like the scared, lonely kid at the table, and you were just very nice. You started asking me questions. We started talking, and then we just kind of hung out a little bit during the course of that celebration. So I've always felt very grateful to you, Chad, for doing that. So thank you very much.
How many beers I had by then?
There were so many glasses on that table. I do not remember how many we're actually talking about here, but but yeah,
And I'm sorry for some of the people I introduced you to.
There was no one that was out of the norm for comic book geekery. So it's been fun. It's been fun to listen to you guys over the years, and having met some of you then, and then listening, like I said, listening now, through the years. It's been fun because I have that connection now. So thanks to you.
Mhm.
But yeah, like I said, Comic Geek Speak is what back in I think it was 2006 when I discovered the show. As I was just a little bit before that, I had just kind of discovered myself podcasts. And shortly after that, I discovered Comic Geek Speak and became a listener and a fan of the show. And I spent a good amount of time thinking about, hey, this podcasting thing, this sounds interesting. I could do that. I don't have any special skills or anything, but I know how to talk, and I can normally I can talk eloquently, I think. Probably not tonight, but it took me a while because I had to understand what podcasting was and how to do it and get the equipment and all that stuff. So it took me a few years to kind of lead up to that, but it was never really a question of what should I podcast about, because there are basically two things that I love, pop culture related, that I love more than anything else in the world. One is comic books, and the other is Star Trek. And so I thought, well, there's only so much Star Trek, right, that you can talk about. Even though I've started doing that now in my show, but there are a bajillion comic books that I have in my collection that I could talk about, and there's more, every week. So it seemed like a never-ending supply of opportunity to talk about comic books. And so eventually, once I felt comfortable with what I knew on how to do it, and I still to this day am learning about how to make a better podcast, how to make better audio, and all that, the technical side of things. But it took me a while to do that, and then finally in 2010, I pulled the trigger and started the show.
And just kind of give a kind of a overview of what. I know you do a couple shows, but what's your main show or the Longbox review about?
Well, primarily, Longbox Review is about the comic books that I read, celebrating comic books in various ways. I like to have conversations with people, have people on the show like you're very nicely doing with me here, and just talking about our love for, and at times, that sometimes love is tough love, and so you critique things. But it always comes from a place of love and respect for the medium. And so I don't have I don't have an X-Men show or a Justice League show or a particular character show, because I didn't want to limit myself to that. And there are many fine podcasts out there that do that, and they do it very well. It's just that I didn't think I could do it. So I kept it more general. So I consider that the main focus of the show. And then over the years, I branched out to a few other things because I wanted to try some different things. You do something for a while, it's like, well, that's great and everything, but maybe I could try this little thing, right? And so I started doing basically an audio journal where I talk about pretty much everything but comic books, in the thing I call the gutters. And then Peter Rios and I got together and started going through the Legion of Superheroes Volume 3, the Baxter run, and that's the Legion project that we do periodically. And then I mentioned Star Trek being my second great pop culture love, and so I decided to start doing a Star Trek focused podcast called Center Seat. And so now I'm doing a bunch of different things.
uh, you sound like you're almost as busy as I am. So how did well I when I was talking Peter a couple of months ago, and so how did that come to fruition with him? Because I know he's a big Legion fan, and what what kind of was the spark that's you guys said let's do this.
I think I'm trying to remember the episode. We had done a few conversations because at one point he put out on Twitter that he was available to be on people's shows if we invited him. And so I jumped at the chance and messaged him immediately and said, "Hey, I'd love to have you on the show." And so we got on, and I don't remember what we talked about that first episode. Now it's been so long, but we were talking about some specific comic book title, and then that led to another episode, and then another episode, and then eventually, I don't know how far along we were in these periodic conversations, but I decided to do a spotlight on the Legion of Superheroes, and knowing that Peter, just from listening to him over the years on Comic Geek Speak and on his show, The Daily Rios, I knew he was a Legion of Superheroes fan too. And so I asked him to come join me on that. And during the course of that conversation, I can't remember if we talked about it on air or if it was something that we talked about while we weren't recording, but he mentioned something about wanting to do a spotlight show on a particular run of Legion of Superheroes. And so he invited me to join him on that journey. And we decided, mostly because I had not read a good chunk of the Legion of Superheroes Volume 3, we decided to focus on that particular run of Legion comics.
Oh, I've listened to a couple episodes, and I just love the depth of knowledge, and it's just fun to kind of to and digest. Just to hear, Good.
Yeah, it's well, I don't know if we've mentioned this on the show or not, but the original intent of the Legion project was to do short episodes to where we could Peter and I know you're laughing, I know. Peter and I could record a few at a time and then release them, going forward, or release them over time. But then as we got into it, we discovered we could not chat just for 30 minutes on a particular issue. And so on average, we do about a 2-hour show per comic. And these comic books
that's short for Peter. He did 3 hours of cover.
I know, you're right. You're right. You're right. The Legion project hasn't quite reached the heights of the Crisis tapes. Yeah. But yeah, that's what, like you said, that's one of the things I love about doing the show with Peter is that, he brings this wonderful knowledge and perspective to the stories that we're reading, and I try to keep up with him on that stuff. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Now, in general, are there any characters or writers let me step back and rephrase. Do you gravitate more towards a character, or artist, or an artist or writer when you're for your reading?
Oh, well, I can say that that has changed over time. It
Hmm.
used to be I would just follow a character no matter what was going on, and I'd buy every issue. Like the one that springs to mind is Nightwing. Uh, Dick Grayson Nightwing is my favorite superhero comic book character of all time. But as I've gotten older, I started following more the creators involved.
Hmm.
So if oh now I'm going to blank on names. When you get to be a certain age, names are hard to remember, folks. Just keep that in mind. Um,
Yeah.
uh, Ed Brubaker. That's who I was trying to.
Hmm.
Anything that Ed Brubaker writes, or uh, oh boy, I'm blanking now. Now that I'm on the spot, you know, the Mark Wades and whatnot. Uh,
Oh,
I don't
we can let
really.
everybody know. It's tell everybody Rob Life. I'm never getting that
Sure.
interview.
Yeah. The question you have to ask yourself though is, do you really want it?
True.
I don't know. Uh, Wait,
So, are there
I
any?
I don't know that I answered your question adequately. Did I?
We're just riffing.
Okay. All right. That's good.
Are there any artists you gravitate towards?
I'm sorry. Say that again.
Any artists?
Oh boy. Uh, that's going to be the same memory loss here. Um, just trying to think of the recent artists that I've been reading. Mikel Hanin. I really like his stuff. Um, Everybody always says Alex Ross, but I like Alex Ross stuff. Uh, Boy, yeah. There's so many.
All right, I won't ask you about your favorite letterer.
Well, that I could say is John Costanza right now because we read a lot of the Legion books, so he does a really great job.
So, how has your show changed over the years? I mean, as you've become more knowledgeable about the different things about podcasting, how has the show evolved?
Well, just from a technical standpoint, I now understand more about audio production and the things that I like or don't actually, probably more specifically, don't like, and I tend to do a lot of editing of the
Hmm.
show because I can't stand the way that the pauses. So like we're doing this live. So if I were recording this with you as a podcast, I'd be taking out all this crap that I've been doing that's now filling the airwaves. But besides that, it's really just been kind of a journey to discover, well, how do I want to approach a certain topic or a certain book, or what kinds of books do I want to focus on.
Hmm.
And it's, early on in the show, it was very focused on DC Comics, some Marvel Comics, and I had a smattering of the independents. As time has gone on, I find myself drawn more towards uh, wanting to talk about the independent books more, because those, to me, that's where the really interesting ideas, the really interesting stories, the really interesting experimentation is going on, rather than the big two.
Hmm. Now, are there have you do you do like interviews with creators or are there any creators really like to interview?
Well, yeah, that list would be long. I have done a few. I had one in particular. I'll just tell this because I like to talk about how scared I was. Uh, uh, George from the current Meanwhile at the podcast, he used to run the George and Tony Entertainment Show. He and I were going to talk about the book Rough Riders, and so we had made plans to do that, and he had put a tweet out and added all of the creators in the tweet, and then suddenly we were going to interview all the creators of the book. And it came together really fast, and it was probably the one of the scariest nights of my life because I'm used to talking to one or two people at a time on the show, and I normally kind of know the people just from previous discussions or appearances, and here I am talking to these 5 creators. While I had questions, basically once we started and they started talking to each other, because we found out that this was the first time that they had all been together at one time to talk about this work. And so they loved just chatting with each other. And so basically the hour that we had with them went by like nothing, because it was just them back and forth chatting. And every once in a while I'd kind of poke my nose in and say, can you answer this question? And but it was one of the greatest and most terrifying nights of my life. But I would never I would never trade it for anything else. It was great.
Yeah, that's all right. If I panic in an interview, just go, that book you wrote, and that was great. So
the classic response, yeah.
But I was just while we've been talking, I've been admiring your setup behind you. Or is that your collection? And I see you have looks like some art on the wall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
do you have do you have your own like little personal cave?
Yeah, this is I'm what I refer to as my office, but it's really my. So you see the boxes over there. That's just some of the collection. The rest of it's off camera here, and then I obviously got some art, mostly prints, but I have some. I don't think you can. Yeah, you're not seeing any original art, I don't think, behind me, but I got some just over here above me. Off camera that I've hung up, stuff that I've pretty much all of it I've gotten at Comic Cons over the years, and so I enjoy. Yeah, those things. Remember those things that we used to go to and we'd be scared of getting the crud from
a lot of people.
Yeah, boy, do I miss those.
Those were the days.
Mm-hmm.
But now what cons have attended since you're over on West Coast, San Diego?
I've been to San Diego once, but that was forever ago. Before San Diego Comic-Con was what we think of as San Diego Comic-Con now. And I just haven't been able to get back there since. So I have mostly gone to Emerald City Comic-Con in Seattle and Rose City Comic-Con in Portland. And then there's been a few others in my area that I've gone to. But those are the 2 big ones.
And at those cons, did you meet which creator did you have to meet somebody you were I don't say went all fanboy over, but it was kind of like a
Well, I mentioned Mark Wade earlier, and I got to briefly talk to him, but he didn't seem to be in a very good mood. I talked to Brian, or I met Brian Michael Bendis, but he was busy talking to someone as he was signing my book. He was busy talking to someone near him, asking about lunch. Um, and a more recent one, which I absolutely loved, was there was a in Boise, Idaho, there was a library con that, or there was a con that the library down there put on, and I decided to go because my daughter lives in that area. So I went to that, and walking through Artist Alley, and lo and behold, Steve Lieber is there. Had no idea he was going to be there. Had a great conversation with him, and that was probably one of the highlights of that particular con.
Nice. So, I mean, I know I really didn't prepare you for this, but what's your, do you have like a take on the current state of the, comic book industry?
Oh,
A lot of, there's a lot of it, there's a lot of good creator owned stuff out there. There's a lot of Kickstarters, that are,
mm-hmm.
That allow, the new talent, people to get their stuff out there, instead of going through, having to go through the regular publishing. I don't know. Thoughts?
Well, I think Kickstarter is great, and things like that, where someone could develop or get the backing so that they can actually do the work and then get it published. I think that allows for a lot of different things to come into the market that would never have made it. So, that's a great change in the last, 40 years that I've been reading comic books. You go basically from 2 publishers to theoretically as many as we want, or that the industry can sustain. So that's great. As far as like, boy, the big 2, how do you improve upon what the big 2 are doing? There's, I don't know, man. That's like trying to stop
Add another line wide event.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's very true. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, as many things as with all the things that they do that seem to tick us off as fans and readers. They're a big business. Marvel and DC are big businesses, or tied to big businesses. And they've got the bottom line and the quarterly reports they got to answer to, and I would not want to be a Dan DiDio or I'm forgetting the guy at Marvel that runs Marvel now, Casada or whoever it is. But it's easy to Monday morning quarterback big 2 comic books, but I prefer to just enjoy what their output as much as I can. Although, like I said, my focus has been more on the independent stuff, and so for me it's been more about the Image model and some of the other smaller publishers that are kind of doing the same thing. Just following the creators and their ideas to wherever they go, I think has been the greatest boon to the comic book industry.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. So, I don't want to keep you too long. So, kind of, if you want to kind of give where people can find your show, your social media, drop details, and let people know where they can check out your stuff, because they should.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, everybody can go to, I have one website, longboxreview.com. That's all one word. And you can find all the episodes that I've done, along with some other things. I used to also post things to that site that were, written in nature and not just audio in nature, but, life gets me or keeps me too busy. So it's hard to do things besides the podcast. So, and then, I kept it easy for people to contact me. It's longboxreview.com. And then on Twitter, it's @longboxreview. Facebook is the same. Instagram is the same. But all that stuff is at longboxreview.com. So you go there and you can click around and find all that that way to contact me or interact with me.
And you also have your shows up on YouTube. Is that correct?
Yeah, when because my host is Libsyn, and so they have an option there to when I post an audio podcast, it puts it as a quote unquote video on YouTube. So if you prefer YouTube or consuming things via YouTube, you have that option as well for the Longbox Review podcast. But there is actually no audio, although there have been times over the years where I've done something like this that we're doing now, Chad, where I've when used to be able to do that through Google Hangouts. And I'd have conversations with people there. So then, you can look at my ugly mug that way if you'd like.
Well, I want to thank you for taking the time this evening to, talk. And, you're welcome back anytime. Even if you just want to kind of hang out and talk comics, that's, I'd be glad to do that. Or maybe we can start a podcast or a
Yeah, well, that would be great. I would love that.
Let's find a really long series.
Yes. Yeah, no, that'd be awesome. And thank you. I really appreciate you inviting me on, and I've had a great time answering the questions and just kind of talking with you.
Oh, and how are you doing? I hear you had a slight accident a couple weeks ago.
Oh yeah, the what is this? About a little over a month ago, actually, I had a bicycle accident and got a concussion. Yeah, but I'm doing much better now, thankfully. But it certainly did cut into my podcast creation time, so I have a bunch to catch up on.
All right. Well, again, I want to kind of thank you. It's great catching up with you after. And, it's been too long since we last really talked. I mean, I know we've been trading messages back and forth, and so let's keep in touch and stay healthy and stay safe, and maybe we'll meet in Reading again someday.
That would be awesome.
All right. Well, you have a good evening, and look forward to talking to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Chad.
All right. Yep.